Several months ago, I did a show back in April, and I asked the question, what would happen if 20% of the high value black men or men with the economics, that 20% block of men, anywhere from the 1%, 5%, 10% up to 20%, men making 80,000 to 100,000 and above, what would happen to the black community, or could the black community sustain itself? And back then in that conversation, back in April, there were very little pushback. Many people thought, they wouldn't be missed. That wouldn't even be a big deal. But obviously right now we can see, 4 months since I did that show, there's a rise more and more, and there's a groundswelling of passport bros, SYSBM bros, and that conversation of men going overseas to improve their choice and chances of finding a woman that would be a wife, whether she's Latina or whether she's Black Latina or African or Caribbean. Brothers are broadening their outlook. Though I think sometimes in our community, people downplay things that they don't want to give much credence to. And I think women are very good at that. They're good to, they have a good way of playing things off so that it doesn't seem like it's have any effect or will have an effect. But the men with money, the men that have the economics, if those men are leaving the United States, that's going to create a huge chasm in the US economy and in the economy of Black people and Black women and Black families. I will say this, just like in the Matrix, this space, the Black manosphere space, is truly becoming an awakening place for men to, one, be able to first come in and listen and partake in the conversation, but then they're looking for options and choices on what next steps they can take to help resolve some of the issues that they're dealing with in our community and themselves particularly. The awakening, most people will characterize that as, becoming red pill. Your mind coming to the understanding of the reality of our society and the reality of how women really move. Not what they say, but what they do. But there's another stage to that awakening. The next stage to that awakening, like with Neo in the Matrix, was now you had to get out. Once you're conscious of the situation, now you have to take actionable steps to get out. And I think we're starting to see little by little what those steps can look like. Fighting for your freedom. Back in 1865, on paper, we were written and stated that we had freedom. But as Black men, we know we have never had freedom. In some type of way, we've always been made to serve. And in some cases, we will even, get into situations where we found ourselves incarcerated. And that's when most men were broken. And they become a lifelong servant to the system and to the community as well. But recently, what I've started to notice also is that sisters who I didn't really anticipate would be the mouthpiece so much, because it's not so much young women that are speaking up on this, some, but not as much. But we see a lot of old heads, older black women speaking out, telling black men, you ain't going nowhere. Telling black men, hey, you on child support. You ain't gonna get no passport. And that's a lie, because you could get a passport as long as you're current. You don't have no arrears, you can get a passport. But then she's always also talking about brothers uh, who have criminal records. Now we know the 52% of black men who don't have children and are single, unmarried, and are in the middle class or upper class. Those men don't have a criminal background. So right off rip, they're not even speaking to the audience, excuse me, of the men that have the ability to exercise those options. They're still in the Pookie mind frame. But that's understandable, because those are the men that they know. Those are the men that they associate with. See, I think one of the blessings that black men who have been rejected or been put in the friend zone by many of the women that they wanted early on in life is that now they have no attachments. There's no real anchor on their legs to keep them bound. The only thing that keeps them bound is their mindset. And the awakening, again, is first setting your mental free. Recently, we also have heard about or have seen some well-respected PUA brothers trying to put fear tactics and insult tactics, mind games, manipulation. More and more, us black men, we're not falling for the mind games anymore. That's a foregone conclusion. You can't embarrass us. And obviously, you know, the simps, the baby mama protectors, they're out in full force at all times. But I think one of the things that black men have to be concerned about, especially the black men who have the wherewithal, the financial capacity, is going to be by the government. And right now, it's not on the government's radar, but probably in the next 3 to 5 years, if things continue like it is, there will be some type of governmental response. And it definitely, I mean, they just launched how many? About 80,000 or so new tax auditors, and they received several billions to do that. They're definitely going to be checking on brothers to make sure that their taxes are clean. So definitely pay your tax, because that's one way Uncle Sam could come at you. Another thing I'd like to really talk about, the main thing I would say is incorporate yourself, because you create a shield between you protect your personal liability, and tax-wise, the government will only see what you expose, and that primarily mean what the business bring in. So we have to learn how to move strategically, because always remember, America is a country that is based on laws. And though we as black men may always be the whipping, how can I say, we become the whipping boys for the ills of society, whereby we are made examples of. Once they create a precedent, it becomes a problem because now there's legal body to be able to enforce those same laws on others. And I think, like with the crack epidemic back in the 80s and 90s, and the devastating effect that had on us and our community, that was the intention of that was to definitely destroy us. But the fallout effect was something far greater. Now we can see that in white communities, fentanyl and other type drugs like that is having a far more devastating effect in their communities than in ours. But I think something that really begs for how Black men can move and what steps we can take, and why I think there's going to be such a big pushback. I think, how can I say, surrounds itself with the fact that younger men like Austin, who are coming out and speaking to the fact that coming out of college, going into the business world, working, immediately looking to extricate themselves from the Black community, from the fuckery that goes on with a lot of our women. And they're not even looking to try to change the female's behavior. I mean, Kevin Samuels spoke a lot about women taking accountability for their actions, and mostly to try to get women to make a change. But I think, females are in power in the United States, not just Black women, but white women and all other women of different ethnicities. They have a very good grip on the power in the United States and the Western world as well. So they're not going to give that up. They're going to fight all the way down to the bitter end. And the thing is, for brothers who are not going to engage in the fight and just move in silence and step and do what you want to do, you can't fight an enemy that's not fighting you. You can't punch the air. And like I've said on time and time again, that as long as Black men are talking, there's still a chance. When Black men stop talking and just start moving, that's when things become really problematic. Recently, I think this weekend, Al Grease, he's premiering his third movie, Frustrated 3. Definitely, I would suggest you guys check it out. But I think with Austin and Al Grease movie coming out, it's really going to shed a big light in our community, particularly for Black men, young men and middle-aged men, right, in their 30s and 40s, 50s, and so on, who may have believed that they lack opportunity and lack options for finding the happiness that they want, not to be lonely or not to be alone. I think we're living right now in a very transformative time, transformative for the Black community and for America. One of the things that Kevin used to say a lot, well, right before he died, I think from the end of 2021, he said, winter is coming. Winter is coming. But winter is coming, and it's going to look a lot different, I think, than maybe he even perceived. Maybe he did have an insight, I don't know. But I think the winter that we're talking about is an economic winter. and it's going to be a cold one. So what I would suggest to brothers, are you ready for the battle? Because once the realization sets in, and black women who are attractive, who have invested a lot in themselves to try to play brothers, to make money, keep brothers in the friend zone, to get favors and different things from, and even young sisters who are in their early 20s who are brought up in that same mindset, when they come to the realization that the brothers that they may find attractive are not even checking for them, I think that's going to really be the point of where things are going to change. And when I say change, I don't mean that the behavior will change. I think that's when the war will begin.